Hey kids, today's video we're going to be in Daniel chapter 6, continuing our series through Daniel. We've seen several stories from the book of Daniel. Dylan's done several videos, I've done. This will be my second video out of Daniel, and today we're going to be talking about Daniel in the lion's den and how Daniel's faith protected him from the lions and brought him out of the lion's den unharmed. So open the story up. We see in Daniel chapter 6, verse 1, that King Darius has come into reign over the land, and this land that he has inherited, or that he reigns over, is a very large, vast area. So vast that he wants to break it down into 120 different provinces or states, or you could even think of it as little towns that he breaks it down into. And he has officials, his people that help him reign over the land and do, like governors and stuff like that. He has these officials come alongside of him to help him do the tasks that need to be done to reign over this large area. And one of those officials is Daniel. We know that Daniel was a faithful man. He was a trustworthy man, and King Darius liked Daniel very much. King Darius knew that he could trust Daniel, so much so that he gave Daniel pretty much the responsibility to look after this vast region that he was king over. The only problem with that is it made the other officials jealous, and these other officials plotted against Daniel, and they were trying to figure out how they could get rid of Daniel, because they knew the king really liked Daniel. They couldn't just go to the king and say, hey, we don't like Daniel, he's not doing a good job, I think you should get rid of him and promote me. They couldn't do that because Daniel was doing a great job, and the king trusted Daniel and knew that Daniel was doing what he had asked him to do. So they came up with this plan that they would talk King Darius into writing a new law that said, if you're caught praying to any other god or bowing down to any other king besides King Darius, that you would be thrown in the lion's den. So they come up with this scheme, this plan, and they go to King Darius one day and they say, King Darius, you're the greatest king ever. And they bow down and they said, oh, live forever, great king. We got a new law that we think you should put into place. And King Darius, of course, I'm sure said, okay, what was that? What's the new idea? What's the new law that you have? And they said, we think that if anyone's caught bowing down or praying to any other person besides you, they should be cast into a den of hungry lions. And he thought about it, and I'm sure being king and being of high authority, he said, okay, if anybody's caught praying to anybody or bowing down to anybody besides me, I'm going to throw them into a den of hungry lions. So he signed the law into effect, and it passed, and so there was a new law. Well, when Daniel heard about this new law, the first thing he did was he didn't go bow down to King Darius or go pray to somebody else. He went and bowed down and prayed to God. The same God that is with us is the same God that Daniel prayed to. Those officials knew that made up this law, knew that Daniel would go pray to God. So they went, followed Daniel, and they saw him praying to God, and they went back to King Darius and they said, King Darius, we found Daniel praying to his God, and we saw him bowing down and asking his God for advice, and this law that you've written, Daniel, is broken. And it grieved King Darius because he loved Daniel and he thought highly of Daniel, and he didn't want to throw him into the lion's den. So he pondered all day how he could deliver Daniel out of this hungry den of lions. And at the end of the day, he had to uphold the law that he had signed. So he brought Daniel forward and he said, Daniel, may the God that you pray to deliver you from these lions. So they cast him into the lion's den. I'm sure they kept the lions hungry, so as soon as you were thrown in there, they would attack you, and they rolled this big stone over top of the hole where you went down in, so you couldn't escape. So here Daniel is, I'm sure scared to death. I know he's praying to God in this moment in his mind, just saying, God, help me get through this. I've been right. I've been faithful. I haven't bowed down to an earthly king. I've bowed down to you, and I've asked your guidance and your protection. And I'm asking that now to help me get through this. Because it was most certainly a death sentence getting cast into that den of lions. So they cast him down into the den. Again, King Darius was greatly grieved over it. It upset him that Daniel was going to get eaten alive by lions. So King Darius went to bed that night. The next morning he arose, it says, and he ran down to the lion's den first thing, and he cried out to Daniel, and he said, "Oh, Daniel, has the king that you prayed to, or the God that you have prayed to, delivered you from the mouths of the lions?" And Daniel responds back from the lion's den, and he says, "O King Darius, live forever. Yes, my God has sent an angel, and he has shut the mouths of these hungry lions." And King Darius was ecstatic. He was so happy and filled with joy. And he ordered his servants to bring Daniel out of the lion's den. And they just rejoiced knowing that Daniel was safe. And King Darius was just relieved knowing that Daniel was safe and that the lions hadn't eaten him. But King Darius realized that he had been tricked into signing this new law. And he brought forth those officials that plotted against Daniel. And he confronted them and he said, "You've plotted against Daniel when Daniel's done nothing wrong. He didn't do anything to deserve this other than y'all's jealousy." And the king ordered that those officials, not only those officials, but the wives of those officials and their children be cast in to the hungry lions. They were all, it says in the scripture, they were all cast in, and as soon as they were thrown in, they were gobbled up by the hungry lions. So it didn't turn out good for the other officials who were jealous and who plotted against Daniel. So just moving forward with that, what we can take from this is that through Daniel's faithfulness, through his willingness not to bow down to an earthly god or any other false god, but his willingness to bow down to the God that he served and the God that he knew could deliver him, brought him through the den of hungry lions and kept him safe the whole night. He even slept with them. The lions didn't harm him at all. They didn't scratch him. They didn't even nibble on him or anything like that. Their mouths were kept shut all night by the angel that God had sent down. So as we're dealing with difficult situations, scary things like I'm sure this was for Daniel, just know that God is with you, that God desires to protect you, that he has a plan for your life, and that he wants a relationship with you, and he wants you to depend on him to get you out of these situations. So if you're going through something, it's as easy as praying to God and saying, "God, help me get through this. I know you're with me, and I know you'll watch after me." And God is willing, and he's ready to help you get through these situations. So just lean on God, lean on his power, not your power. It was God's power who shut the mouths of the lions. Lean on his power, and just know that he's there for you whenever you need him. God bless.